Hi everyone, Chaz916 here. Welcome to my RPG channel. Like and subscribe if you have a mind to. Okay, so today let's delve again into the new 2024 D&D. The new Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide are available for pre-order. I'm not really trying to advertise them, but you should know that they're available. As of today, there are 4 new videos that they have put out that are giving us sneak peeks into some facets of the new 2024 editions. Okay, so yesterday I covered the video, the 2024 Player's Handbook, Everything You Need to Know. You can find that in my playlist, so check it out there. Also, today I thought I would start off at the very beginning, and that it for me as a player is character origins. And as you can see, they have come out with it. It's here. It came out 23 hours ago. Now, the other one I've done is the Everything You Need to Know. That one came out a day ago. Okay, so today, this is the one we're going to take a look at, and I'm really anxious to see what kind of new stuff they have done with it, and what kind of wonders we're going to experience here. Okay, so without further ado, let's take our dive. Let's head for character origins. Okay, so before we get into this, there's a couple of things I'm hoping to find. One, I want to see, I know that they've improved the backgrounds, but I don't know exactly how yet. Some things I would like to see is I would like to see aspects of the background that will help with immersion. When players pick a background, I want that to help them get into and become a part of my world. That's part of what the origin is. I want them to feel like they're a part of it. And the other is role-playing aspects. I want to be able to see how the role-playing, how the background can play into, how they'll be able to use that as they're, doing their characters. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so.
So when you're making your character now, you will first choose your class, the most important choice you make for your character, and then you will flesh out your character's origin. And so we like to think of it as you might decide.
Okay, so in general, this is true. I usually figure out, okay, I want to play a wizard, okay, and I want, so I usually do figure out the class first, but not always. Sometimes I just come up with a background that I haven't played before, so don't be pigeonholed by that. You can go either way. Either way works. It doesn't have to be specific, but he's not saying it has to be, but just so that you know that you don't have to come up with your ideas that way. You can do it any way that feels natural for you.
I want to be a fighter, or I want to be a rogue, or a cleric, or a wizard. And then you think, well, how did I get there? What did I do before I was a member of that class? And what do I know about my character's childhood? And so it's when you start pondering those questions that you turn toward the character origins chapter. And you will essentially be going back in time in your character's backstory. So again, you start with your class, then you'll ponder, well, what was my character's background? And background is all about not only what you did prior to becoming an adventurer, but also where you did it. Were you a sailor? Were you a criminal? Were you an acolyte in a temple? Were you a sage? And then you keep going back in time in your character's origin to your birth. And that's when you then ponder your character's species. And your...
Okay, so now I'm starting to get an idea where they're going with this. Okay, so origin apparently is a combination of your background and your species. But it's kind of leaving out a few things that I like to have to flesh my characters out more. And some of those would be family. Obviously, you can still work on those kind of things, but it'd be nice to have them as game relevant as well. Um, just my opinion. Okay, let's continue on.
Species choice and your background choice together combine to give you a number of critical game capabilities that will really help flesh out your character. Background has far more weight for your character now than it did in the 2014 rules. People in the Unearthed Arcana process got to see a preview of this where, in addition to giving you proficiencies, as backgrounds previously did, backgrounds also now all give you...
Okay, so one more thing on that. You know, a lot of the game is changing towards making the social pillar, as he called it in the last video, because social interaction is becoming a more important part of the game. But social interaction begins with the family. So to me, that's kind of a missing piece here. But I don't think it's going to hurt too much. We can homebrew that in. Also, they're emphasizing kind of one background. But what if your idea for the character is that he's worked a couple of different things? Maybe he was on a boat at one time, he was a sailor, and then he got tired of the sea and he started doing tree cutting or, you know, something like that. So I'm really curious whether we're going to be able to have more than one background and how you would create characters that have more than one background. Um, Maybe advancing the character's age, have the character start as a mature character as opposed to a younger character. I don't know. Let's see what they have to say here.
a feat at first level. They also determine ability score bonuses for you when you make your character. And these are abilities...
Okay, I kind of talked over that, but what he was talking about is first, as part of your background, you're going to get a feat. This was not in the playtest, but we have heard since then that it was coming, so I was not surprised to hear it. I think it's a great idea. I love that you're going to get a feat as a first level character. Okay, I'll try not to overstep them.
Score bonuses that really are rising up out of how your character spent their time prior to embarking on the wilds of adventure. And those two things in particular, the ability score adjustments that backgrounds bring, as well as the feat, mean your background will have an effect on your character for your entire career. And
yeah, see, that's what I like. I like the detail, and I like that it affects the game. And with the social pillar, I really think, and I don't want to criticize because this game is turning out so well, but I think they missed an opportunity here. Family is your first social interactions. It would have the most bearing on how your character is going to interact socially throughout the rest of your game. And that's not included, but maybe they'll do that somewhere down the line. Okay.
that was something that was not necessarily the case in 2014 backgrounds, except for perhaps the proficiencies you got.
Right.
You would still enjoy those throughout your career. But now there are more parts of your character that are forever affected by your character's background. Now, to support the use of feats at first level, we have now divided feats up into categories, because we don't want a first level character to be plunged into the deep end.
Yeah, you guys have probably noticed by now, D&D loves to give new titles and new categories, and they break things into lots and lots of little pieces. Just kind of, sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. So you'll have to pay attention, learn all of the new vocab.
Of the feat pool, we want you to be able to sample feats and to have that sampling be curated so that the feat you get from your background is from...
Okay, I don't want to distract too much from what he's saying, but, and I haven't mentioned it yet, you guys please pay some attention. I know what he's saying is important, but the artwork is really great. Let them know. If you like the artwork, let them know so they know.
From a special selection of feats that are appropriate for a starting character. And so those feats are now in a category called origin feats, appropriately enough, because you get them as a part of your character origin. Now, even though they're in that category, later on, if you decide to go deeper into feats, you could potentially choose other origin feats for your character as well. But to start, each person gets just one origin feat that's provided by their background. In addition to...
Okay, now that's given me an idea. I'm sorry. You guys really should go see this for yourselves. But I just had a thought, and that is that if you had more than one background, like when you gained second level, you could add second background that your character had, and you would also be able to use your attribute or your ability increase, use that feat to get that second background. So that's kind of an interesting twist there. Anyway, it gives me some things to think about and some things that I can work with on home brewing.
the proficiencies your background is providing, as well as the ability score adjustments. Now, those ability score adjustments to me are really juicy because of the flexibility that we provide. And this is a flexibility that goes beyond anything that we previewed in Unearthed Arcana. So what we now do in each background is we provide 3 ability options. And then you as a player decide, am I going to put +2 in one of those 3, and you choose which of the 3, and then +1 in one of the other 2, or am I going to do +1 in all 3? So here's an example. The Acolyte, if you decided your character, whatever class you're a part of, spent their formative years serving in a temple in some capacity, you could choose Acolyte. And the Acolyte background tells you that the 3 abilities that you have the option to adjust are intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And you have total freedom in which of those you decide gets the +2, which one gets a +1, or if you maybe don't want to make that choice and just give +1 to all 3.
Right.
We did this because we want backgrounds to interlock with as many appropriate classes as possible. Previously, when we previewed this approach to backgrounds of them providing ability score adjustments, one of the downsides of the playtest version is it kind of hard-locked the backgrounds to specific classes.
Yeah.
And we did not want to proceed with that because in some ways that was recreating the exact problem that we were getting away from 2014 Species, because in 2014 these ability score adjustments existed inside the playable species, and one of the reasons we moved it out of there is we didn't like how that drove certain species to be combined with certain classes. We wanted people to...
Okay, so those who aren't really familiar with what's going on, what he's talking about is that a lot of times people would pick a specific species because of the attribute increases that would help their class. So they were kind of being locked together. So, and they wanted to prevent that from happening when you're doing backgrounds. If you're putting those bonuses in the backgrounds, and they did not want that whole thing again to happen. And all of this is coming about because of something that's happened in role-playing games, and that is that a lot of people, myself included, we play video games as well as role-playing games. And in video games, build consciousness, as I like to call it, is important because when you're trying to fight something that's really tough or handle some really difficult things, especially if you're playing solo in a video game, you have to be very focused on your build. You need to optimize it in order to survive and to win those challenges and to take out those bosses. Now, this has leaked into role-playing games quite a bit. Well, much has leaked in between the two. And this can be a problem. A lot of people refer to them as min-maximers, because they minimize, maximize everything. Other people got into it because they do like to do game analysis, and they like to see, okay, what's my damage per, what's my average damage per attack, and all of these other things. And those are all valid things. I think they should play less of a role in role-playing games, and the focus should be on role-playing, because it's a different kind of game. But that does not mean that you can ignore it. You are always going to want to make sure that your character is keeping up, that he's able to handle the challenges that are thrown at him. So that's going to mean you're going to need to improve your character. I just don't want to see it get too carried away like it does in video games. In video games, it's very frustrating if you don't want to play with the options that are required to take out certain bosses. It kind of messes up the game for you, and I don't want that to happen in my RPGs. So, my opinion, okay, let's get back to this.
Feel more free to mix and match. And so here, rather than just recreate the same restriction, we now do have a little bit of a restriction, but you have tremendous amount of flexibility within it. I mean, because you have 3 of the game's 6 abilities to play with, no matter which background you choose. And really, it's just which 3 changes from background to background. And we made sure that there was a broad range of character building options in the different backgrounds to support many different character builds. Like if I jump ahead in the chapter to the guide, for instance, the guide's 3 abilities are dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. That combo means the guide.
Okay, now that was something I'm surprised, because they have been very hesitant in the past to do anything that gives you bonuses on your constitution. Very few species, or what they used to call races, had bonuses to constitution. So this is kind of interesting. I'm happy to see it. Okay.
Guide is actually a happy background for a number of different classes, particularly because everyone is happy to have constitution. Really, any background that has constitution as one of the 3 will work with pretty much any class. And this was something very much on our minds as we created these trios in each of the backgrounds to really make sure that the 16 backgrounds in this book provide a huge array of character building options. And now if someone wants to go beyond the 16 background options in the player's handbook, the new Dungeon Master's Guide provides guidance under the DM's supervision on creating additional backgrounds. But in the player's handbook itself, there are these 16 to choose from. There are a few backgrounds that shared the feats that they offer, because we did not want to force people to choose a certain background
because that was optimal
for certain feats. Now, there are a number of feats that are, only one background offers that feat, but there are a few, and Alert is a great example of them, where the...
Okay, so I can see now that feats may end up with the same kind of an effect as they had with species before, and what they're trying to avoid. So I'm hoping maybe somewhere down the line they will be able to come up with enough feats, or I'm hoping that they found ways around that issue. but in general, since you get feats, at every level, I'm thinking that that's going to be a lot less of an effect as far as locking things and, the min-maximers are going to have, or optimizers, or whatever you wish to call, build-focused players, um, that it will give them still with enough options, even for them. Okay.
The feat is offered by more than one background.
Right. Skilled is a similar one as well.
Yes, particularly because the skilled feat is so open-ended. All of these combinations of options, the feats, the ability score adjustments, the proficiencies, also the starting equipment that the backgrounds provide, mean that each background is a package of very distinct options from the other backgrounds. Of course, you can dig deeper into feats if you decide to at higher levels. When everyone reaches 4th level, they get ability score increase, just as they did in the 2014 Player's Handbook. But ability score increase is now itself a feat. And just like in 2014, you have the option of taking that feat or selecting a different one.
Yeah, just for those who didn't participate in the playtest, that was an interesting change that they made, and that is that the ability score increases don't happen just because you're going up in level, but because you took that feat at that level. That's interesting. I like the way they did it then. I like it during playtest. I think it's going to work good.
And because we now have given everyone a taste of feats at 1st level, we wanted to make sure that this book had more feats available, which is why there are 75 of them in this book, so that if you do decide to go into the fun customization world of feats, there's more there for you to play with, and the feats have all been enhanced, in some cases completely redesigned. And then there's the whole other half of your origin, your species.
Right, and we've got a lot of new things in the species. We've got new additions. So the orc has joined, Goliaths have joined, and
The Aasimar.
And
those 3 brand new options, and they join, of course, classic options like human, elf, halfling, gnome, the tiefling, the dragonborn are still with us as well. And every one of these species has been revisited, has been enhanced. A number of these enhancements people got to see in the Unearthed Arcana process, with like the dragonborn having an enhanced breath weapon, and then when they get to higher level, even gaining the ability to sprout wings and fly.
Yeah.
And even humans and halflings have been revisited and in some of their traits redesigned.
The Dragonborn are super Dragonborn. The Goliaths are very Goliath, because now they're tied to giants. Not surprisingly, if you have the background, a background being a cloud giant in your heritage.
Oh, surprise, surprise. Goliaths are related to giants. That was pretty obvious, but I'm glad that they're finally building that into the game so that it's actually really leaning into what Goliaths were envisioned as. And I think that's kind of a replacement for the old half-giant thing they had going in some of the previous versions. I don't know. It's just my thought on it, that's all.
Then you can kind of, Misty step away, teleport away, because you're more of a trickster. But it's all based off like hill giant, storm, stone. All of it has different abilities that you can choose from.
And that is a part of the theme that we had with the species, which was to really lean into the fantasy of each one. This is why dwarves now have tremor sense
Which
that
is
they
amazing.
can use a certain number of times a day, where we, again, wanting to lean harder into what is the resonant fantasy of each of these peoples, And part of that with dwarves, with their connection to the earth. Well, let's give them this really remarkable ability a certain number of times per day to sense things through the earth itself. Their dark vision has also gotten better. Dwarves and orcs both have dark vision out to 120 feet in the new player's handbook. Really driving home that certain peoples have spent, at least their ancestors have spent more time underground than some of the other peoples. Humans, I mentioned, have been redesigned with the origin feats in the game in mind, because now if you choose human, you get to choose an additional origin feat for your character. So you'll not only get the origin feat of your background, but also one of your choice. And humans now each day start off with heroic inspiration.
Okay, so, wow, that really bumps humans up. In the past, they've been kind of downplayed because a lot of people, they're just kind of plain and vanilla and too much like the real life that most players are already in. But I think this is going to help. Getting the 2 feats at first and being a bit more versatile, which is kind of playing into what they were thinking for humans as being a very versatile species. So I think it's going to fit with their conceptualization or way of looking at it. Not sure if I agree with that, but it seems to be playing into what they were designing for.
That's right.
Also, people will see that because we want each species to really bring its own fantasy to life, they're very asymmetrical in how we have designed them. So some of them have choice points in them where, you mentioned the Goliath earlier, where you might be picking a type of giant that you're associated with, or, Dragonborn have their different breath weapon options. But then we have others like the halfling, the dwarf, the orc, where there aren't choice points like that because their fantasy didn't demand that in the design, but it's also because we did not want every single one to have the same complexity level. Just as our classes and subclasses have different complexity levels, the species have different complexity levels as well.
So we talk about a lot about meeting that fantasy.
Okay, some people might be wondering why would you want different complexities, and that's because if you are a new player, it's much easier to handle a character that is not quite so complex. It doesn't have quite so many layers of things to figure out and to work out. But by the same token, advanced players get bored with that kind of a character. So it looks like they're providing a mix so that no matter what spectrum you're on, that you'll be able to find something that's just going to suit you. And I like that design approach. So far, so good.
See that wish fulfillment. Mechanically, that's done as well in action economy. The Goliath, being that it is now tied closer to giants, you can get big. Once you hit a certain level, you can go one size larger. But you can do this as a bonus action. You're not taking a full action to have that happen for you. You're just getting big and then possibly attacking and terrifying a group. Dragonborn is the same thing, and this was a change that we saw in a previous book, but you can now use your breath weapon. Not only does it get more powerful over time, but if you take the attack action, one of those attacks can be the breath weapon.
Absolutely.
So you're not...
Okay, so they have definitely made things a bit more versatile. I noticed that in the last video, and that is that there's a lot more that you can use an attack action for. You can pop in some other things that you couldn't do before, and a lot of times now you can use a bonus action instead of an action to do things like to choke down a potion. So a lot of more versatility coming, and I think we're going to see some really interesting gameplay because of it.
sacrificing, if you're a fighter, a bunch of your attacks that could have been possibly more effective by using the breath weapon. You're just layering it on to what you can already do.
And another example of us really deepening the fantasy and giving people more options is in the Aasimar, where before you had to pick a single celestial revelation, and that was true for your character forever. You now get to change that choice every time you use it, because we figured, well, an Aasimar who is descended from celestials sure might have some days where they're in the mood to shine with light, but they might also have some days where they're more on the vengeful end of the celestial spectrum and choose one of the other celestial revelation options.
So significant changes to species. We've got several more species to work with, and a lot of layered on abilities that kind of hit that, again, that wish fulfillment of like, this is what I want. I want to be a big character, a big Goliath. I can get big. Bonus action, I'm huge. Now I'm just going to pummel.
The character creation chapter in this book includes a sidebar that explains how to use backgrounds and species from older books. Because over the last decade, there have been several different approaches to where you get your ability score increase, do you get a feat or not. We have a rule in the character creation chapter on how to use backgrounds or species from other books that don't appear in this book. So any species or background that appears in this book that also appeared in an earlier book, the version in the new player's handbook is now the canonical version. But if there's, say, a species or background in an older book that is not in the new player's handbook and you would still like to use it, you can. And again, the character creation chapter provides guidance on how you can do that.
Okay, so they've included information that's going to be useful for us to homebrew additional backgrounds, and I think that that's going to work out really good for those of us who really like homebrewing. Before we get into their brief advertisement, let me remind you guys that there are 16 backgrounds, 75 feats, and 3 new species. Now, all of this is great for the game. Okay, so let me give them the moment they need to try to get you to buy their book.
The New Player's Handbook is available for pre-order right now on D&D Beyond. You can find that link in the video description. And you can also find the new core rulebooks bundle for pre-order, both physical and digital. Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the New Player's Handbook and all the new core rulebooks, the new...
And he isn't kidding. We are getting hit with the videos, so stay tuned, guys. And now, before I end this out, I want to thank you guys for joining me. I hope to see you on the next one, and you guys take care. Bye-bye.